If I can have your attention again, please. Anyone willing to share? Okay. That's right. What did you talk about at your table?
So we talked about how, like, if the patron is saying that they're telling us that we need to do something, we could offer that patron who's complaining to go into the all-gender bathroom because we don't want to discriminate against the person who is possibly transgender, and they are allowed to be in the locker room that they identify as.
Do we agree, Snap? Do we agree? Snap. Okay. What other answers do we get? There's no right or wrong answer. So I'm curious about what you all talked about. Yeah.
So you would send a male employee into the locker room just to scope it out, investigate, not really approach anyone yet. If they're doing their own business and just keeping to themselves, you leave them be. You go out, you tell the patron they are allowed to be in there, you know, inclusivity, all that jazz. But if the male employee is scoping out and they truly are harassing someone, blatant staring, making comments, personal space, any sort of harassment that can come from anyone, that's when you would approach the patron in the locker room and tell them this type of behavior is unacceptable. We're gonna have to ask you to leave.
Awesome. Snap, do you agree? There you go. You don't want to hit me.
Boy.
You should have caught him on your wrist.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. Different people identify different ways. That's a good way to respond to it. Perfect. Sorry, I'm throwing out our swag. If you want one of these, come to the Student Involvement Fair. We have slap bracelets. It's my shameless plug. Any other responses? Yeah.
I wouldn't invalidate the person that seems uncomfortable coming out of the locker room. I would still validate them and give them their space.
Yeah.
And apologize instead of just automatically saying, you know, no, that's okay, they're allowed to be in there. Still give them their space and apologize. Like, I'm sorry, you're uncomfortable. Like, you don't want to completely negate the person who is uncomfortable. Yeah. And still validate them too.
Absolutely. This could be the first time they've ever met someone, right? Or ever experienced that. So absolutely. Snap? Any others? All of these responses were fantastic. Absolutely. You do want to validate that person's experience, right? It's not about just shutting somebody down. I love that you went to the educational experience first. That's beautiful. Hey, actually here at UNC, we have all gender restroom spaces, as well as, sorry, lots of stuff going on there, as well as the fact that gender identity is protected in our non-discrimination policy. So folks are allowed to use whatever restroom or locker room space that they would like. I totally agree with you though. There's a difference between going and utilizing a space and going in and having harassing behavior. And we want to make sure that's a clear delineation, right? You can ask the patron, oh, I'm so sorry, were they doing something? And then you can really tell where the conversation is going to go real quick, right? Like, it'll either go, well, no, they were just existing, you know? They were just there. Or they might, you know, say like, oh no, they were making rude comments, or they were looking at me inappropriately. Those kind of things help you to delineate which path you're going to take, okay? But all of these responses were appropriate, and I thank you all so much. This is awesome. I want this to be practical for you all, and this might happen. We are so lucky. I feel super fortunate to get to work with all of these amazing people over here, all your pro staff, who make this one of the most LGBTQ-friendly establishments, I believe, in the state of Colorado, and we can back that up through assessment data, through our Campus Pride Index. So that's awesome. You all contribute to that. And so being thoughtful about how we have these responses is super important. So I thank you for it. We're going to move on. The next thing we're going to talk about really quickly is we've talked a lot about trans identities. You can go to the next one. But just in case folks were curious, transgender is often used as an umbrella term, and it refers most broadly to those outside of social gender norms or expectations, right? So Gender binary is the thing we talked about earlier with up and down process. Transgender is the umbrella term. Cisgender is a relatively new term, and that term essentially is, we were always getting folks saying like, well, you're either transgender or you're normal. Unfortunately, that felt really weird for a lot of people, and so cisgender, cis simply means alignment. It means that your gender identity aligns with the sex that you were born. So we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, and then talking about queer. Queer is also a term that has been kind of reclaimed in recent years. And so essentially it's also an umbrella term kind of, so it means not straight, so out of the gender sexual society constructing norms. And again, like I said, it was originally like a prerogative term, so it was used as an insult and stuff, but people have reclaimed it to mean kind of like an umbrella term, just like encompassing anyone who doesn't fit within the binary. Yeah, some people are still uncomfortable using the term queer, so always just use whatever term they're comfortable with. But yeah.
Mirror the language that was used to you. And last but not least is intersex when we're talking about language. So intersex characteristics, the outdated terminology for this was hermaphrodites, right? But now we use the term intersex. And many people are like, oh, I get this. Like, I completely understand. That means genitalia. That means in some way your genitalia is intermediate. It's in some way not fully formed or something. If we can go to the next slide, these are all the different ways in which you can be intersex. Right? Many folks don't even know that they have intersex characteristics. And so it's really important that we, again, not stereotype. Again, we've only received one message around intersex folks, and there are many different ways that that plays out for people in their lives. You can go to the next. So, actually, I'm going to have, we can jump right into allyship. So we'll go into the next slide really quickly.
This is a really interesting website. It shows all the references to the terms faggot, gay, so gay, dyke on Twitter, and this is just today, how many instances. So it takes all the instances that have been written in posts and kind of just shows how many of them there have been.
The reason we bring this up and show you all this is because oftentimes folks are like, why are you here? Like, why do we need to know about gender and sexuality? I work in campus recreation. Like, why is this important at all, right? And the reason is because today, just on Twitter, faggot has been used 998 times, and it's 1032. There are a lot of negative messages out there around folks who hold marginalized gender and sexual orientations, right? And so it is helpful to have folks to counter those messages. And you can see the numbers continue to go up. We're at 999 times, 794. You can go back to those slides. So, what can you do? You can be an ally using gender non-specific language. So ask somebody about their partner, not their boyfriend or girlfriend. Happens to me all the time, folks. They see my wedding ring, they're like, oh my gosh, what's your wife's name? Like, well, my husband's name is Joseph, and this is awkward for both of us. So, you know, try, be thoughtful of that, right? Use, what's your partner's name? Who's your significant other? Respect a person's right to remain closeted, right? There are many times where we try to go overboard and we're like, I'm going to be an ally to this person. I know they'd be supported. I know our campus rec staff would be supportive. I'm going to tell them to come out. I'm going to urge you not to do that. We never know the consequences of someone coming out. I had a former student who came out. A friend of theirs was like, I love you so much on their Facebook profile, and they posted a little JPEG of like a rainbow. The aunt saw the JPEG of the rainbow, called mom and dad. Mom and dad called the student, and within 12 hours of that being posted, the student was completely cut off from all financial support and didn't know how they were going to go to their next semester of college. We don't know what the consequences are of someone coming out. Never urge anybody to come out. And remember, just because someone has come out to you doesn't mean that they've come out to anybody else. And last but not least, remember, on this slide at least, that anyone can be LGBTQ. Oftentimes we hear a frame like, well, there are no LGBTQ people in my favorite is always in Greek life. I'll have that one fraternity that will come to me and be like, well, there are no gay men in my fraternity. Okay. It's fine. There's no organization, there's no group that excludes LGBTQ people. They just might not be out, right? They might not feel safe or comfortable to be out in public.
I just want to mention on that, I'm a huge NASCAR fan, so don't see that a lot. Yeah, so other ways to be an ally, you can challenge your own conceptions about gender-appropriate roles and behaviors. So that's, again, goes back to just way people express their gender identity or have gender expression, feminine, masculine traits, and not stereotyping who they are as a person. We can provide students and colleagues the space and opportunity to self-identify, again, not outing people, being just supportive of who they are and how they choose to identify. And then please don't refer to it as a gay lifestyle, preference, or a choice. That definitely implies that there's only one way to be gay, lesbian, bisexual, or queer, and also implies that sexual orientation is a choice, which it is not.
And plus, it's really awkward. I'm sorry. So I've had folks come up to me and they're like, "Don't worry. I just want you to know I totally support your choice." And my reframe is always the same. I'm like, "I totally support your choice too. It must be super hard to be heterosexual. I don't understand." Like, it's just a weird thing to say. We wouldn't say it to each other, so why would we say it to folks? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So we can move on. Do not assume someone's gender identity, right? A lot of times you don't know someone's gender identity. You don't know if someone identifies as trans one way or the other. Which gender pronouns would you like me to use? Think about our forms and how they can be inclusive. And most importantly, give yourself permission to mess up. You're gonna mess up. It's okay. We all mess up. You might use the wrong pronoun for somebody. You might say, hey, you guys, we did. As long as you acknowledge it and you kind of correct yourself, that's all we're really asking for. We want an atmosphere and a climate of mutual respect. So if you mess up and you use the wrong pronoun, you're going to say, oh, I'm so sorry, he was going to this store. And that's all you need to do. Correct yourself, quickly apologize, and move on. And it will make someone's life so much easier. Unfortunately, sometimes folks get into their life stories, like folks will be using my pronouns, and they're like, oh, Steven, this is so confusing, you know? Like, first of all, it's not grammatically correct. And second of all, like, this is really difficult for me to learn and everything else. Like, I don't mind personally, but a lot of our students really do mind. You don't need to get into your life process about getting their pronouns right. Just apologize, use the right pronoun, and move forward. Okay? Resources.
Our beautiful, wonderful website, which is super easy to remember.
One more click away, maybe. This is not reassuring.
There we go. There it is. It's beautiful. So it looks a little different right now, but we updated it with our beautiful picture of our house. Super easy to get to, unco.edu/GSRC. We've got a ton of resources on there. We've got a mission statement, where you can go to find out more information. We've got a bunch of different pride flags. You can check out what those mean. Resources for trans students, just a ton of things. Also our contact information, if you want to get in contact with us.
We support out of the center 12 affinity groups, and those are groups that students can meet up, find community with other folks who identify that way, and that can be anything from the LGBTQ Christian Bible study group that meets twice a week in the center, to our trans and non-binary group, which meets bi-weekly. We do have a whole host of things going on for Welcome Week. All of these include our affinity groups. We're doing a movie screening in the backyard. We always actually provide HIV testing for folks once a month in the center. So you can find that information on our website as well too. I encourage every one of you to know your status and get tested one way or the other. We also are going to have an open house and the kickoff where we are going to have an ice cream social build your own Sunday. So that will be on Monday, August 27th from 11 to 2. So please come visit us. We would love to see all of your smiling faces.
I'll be there.
Yay. Just as a reminder, I wanted to remind folks about 7 Strong Night at the Rec. I really, really hope to see a lot of you all there on the 23rd from 5 to 7. All of our units will be there, so that is not only the Gender and Sexuality Resource Center, but all of the 7 cultural and resource centers on campus.
Yeah.
That's all we got. Does anybody have any questions for us at all? Yeah.
On that first pronouns page you showed us, there was like 3 categories for the gender neutral. What
Yeah.
were the differences on the last 2?
Yeah. Zero, and Zim, and here, and here's, they're taken specifically from other cultures' dialects, and so I believe you can go back. Zero and Zim, I think, has German roots as well too, and so each was just kind of utilized by different individuals and has started to be used in more of a broader sense as well too. The one we see most on campus, honestly, is they, them, there. We see a ton of our trans students using they, them, there. That's a good question. Yeah.
Another question about pronouns. So if somebody identifies as like his, him, and his,
He, him, and his. You got it.
is it ever insulting to say they pronouns?
So we tell folks if you can use the pronouns that they've identified for you, most of the times because they've usually worked really, really hard or gone through some kind of transition process to be honored as he, right? And so to acknowledge them as he is first preferable. If you happen to use they, it's dependent upon the person, but honor what they have asked you essentially to do. So if they said, please use he, him, and his, try to use he, him, and his. And they can be used, we don't realize how often we use they all the time, right? The post person came today, they left a package for you, right? We use they a lot to describe a singular person. We're just not really thoughtful of it all the time.
I also want to go back to just like something that's really cool about the pronouns they is that the Oxford English Dictionary, I believe last year, actually updated it to where they is grammatically correct as referring to a single person. It's really cool.
The more you know. Any other questions? Yeah.
Before you were saying if someone says that someone's in the wrong locker room or something and they say they were like looking at you inappropriately, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I think I would immediately say, if someone said that to me, they were looking at me inappropriately, I would say, hey, we want to handle that immediately. Let me get somebody to go into that locker room. Because if someone is looking at me inappropriately or leering or whatever, you can at least go in and do a scan. Absolutely, right? Go in, do the scan, see, like, is everyone okay in here? Is everything going okay? Okay, we're good. And kind of go out. You can do a self-assessment, but you all will go through, and I'm sure have talked about training with if someone's harassing. We're followed by Title IX, so you all will get to hear all about what to do in those specific types of cases in your next presentation. But you're going to have to make a self-assessment of that, right? Is this person doing something, harassing somebody, having that, like actually being a harasser as opposed to they're just physically existing in the space. So I know that's not a cut and dry answer, but it's not a cut and dry scenario. Other questions? Yeah.
Pet in your house?
Do I have a pet at my house?
Like, are you guys gonna get a pet for your
Oh,
I keep saying we should.
so
It's been 2 years waiting.
So we just moved into our house August of 2017, and all of the students really wanted me to agree to get a dog. And so as an underhanded way of trying to force me to get a dog, they had our marketing team put the little dog on our flyer. And I still haven't caved yet, and because a puppy is a big responsibility.
That's cute.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
I told them maybe a turtle. Lots. Yeah.
So are the pronouns they, them, theirs specific
they, them, their pronouns. It's not just gender fluid or transgender people. So just because someone uses they, them, their doesn't really mean that you know what their gender identity is. Good question. Anything else? If you all run into anything, please, number one, your supervisors are awesome, and they've gone through a lot of training to handle these situations. But if you ever want to brainstorm something, folks usually reach out to us when they have to do class projects a whole lot. So if you ever have a class project around gender and sexuality, or if you ever want to just talk about this more in depth, please reach out to us. All of our contact information was on that last slide, and we would love to have a conversation with you. This is what we do. We really, really want to create the best campus experience for all UNC students. Thank you all so much for your time.